Hello, my name is Adam Lees. I'm a seminarian here at VTS from the Diocese of Alaska. And last August, under the auspices of the Center for Anglican Communion Studies, I was blessed with the opportunity to go to participate in a cross-cultural education program in Tanzania, specifically in Dodoma, the capital in the Central Highlands. Getting ready for this trip, the seminary does require us to take a class for anyone wanting to do a SEEP, which is what we call these programs, with Dr. Robert Heaney, the Emeritus Director of CACS. And that was very helpful, especially in looking over in some ways the sociology of and narratives that we build around overseas mission. I hate to be called a missionary. Eventually in Tanzania, they would call me nothing less, and it was just easier to say, so we kept with missionary. But I had gone on mission trips before with my church in Florida to the Dominican Republic and Honduras. I've been in other places in Latin America, so I was used to somewhat of a dynamic you tend to see in developing worlds and in the global south. But being able to have those experience but also look at it was really good preparation because some of those dynamics, like wanting to focus on things are different or be so starry-eyed that you don't allow yourself to be shocked by some of what you experience, was quite helpful. On a practical side, what was also very helpful, just getting Duolingo and learning how to speak Swahili. Swahili isn't great, but when you are able to go up in front of an audience of people who do not speak English and say, I am so happy to be with you today, the church is doing well, it is a sea change, and it's a fantastic show of respect. So I'd recommend anyone, if they have an ability to learn the language, to do that. My greatest surprise during this program, I suppose one of the things that surprised me was I was not expecting to have as much time to just be present as I had. I get very nervous when I'd have too little to do, and thankfully, especially with COVID throwing everything through a loop, my hosts were very flexible, and I wound up being able to do something I'd never even thought of doing, which was visiting several of the diocesan schools that the Diocese of Central Tanganyika operated. It was a crash course in Tanzania's education system. I will never forget that. And it also opened up new avenues of discussing what it was, of family dynamics, of how theological education different there, how even our education systems are different. It was it opened for some very, very good conversations that I wouldn't have expected. I also did not expect to gain so much weight while I was there. You will always be fed in Tanzania. You will need to prepare to burn the calories. On a more serious note, I did learn that I have managed to maintain a bit of my flexibility. Uh, Alaska has allowed me to embrace the tame nature, but still living in the United States, especially being here in Alexandria, one can get too comfortable very easily. And I was happy to see that I could still adapt. Um, but on a more important note, I think it was so familiar, the pace of the pace of a city, the pace of worship, the place where I was, that for all the differences, it almost made it easier to feel God's presence. And being amongst a community that is not just the school, but the entire country, where praying and going to church and blessing and singing are just commonplace, if not even expected. Uh, they kind of remind you of the different context you're operating in and how we almost need to work harder to really notice God in the United States than I really had to in Tanzania, because besides just the beauty of the area, you also just were confronted with it so much. The experiences, as far as they pertain to my ongoing ministry, I hope to go into ministry as a layperson in Alaska. Alaska and Tanzania have a lot in common in some ways. Americans can't find us on maps very easily. But on a more serious note, we also have many indigenous villages. There are lots of languages in my diocese, especially because of our historic uh, missionary activities among our Alaska Native peoples. And being able to live, like, being in Alaska prepared me in some ways for Tanzania, but being in Tanzania almost opened me up. It made me realize my own skepticisms, the mindset that I carried with me that actually can get in the way when you move into an area where God just feels so imminently present and you are so connected to the land. On a side note, everyone I met in Tanzania grew something or raised chickens or ducks. Lots of cows in the neighborhood. The school grew produce for its own consumption and to sell. It is still an agricultural society. But back to Alaska, within my own ministries there, being able to lean into a different rhythm, a different expectation for your relationship with the land is big. But also, in some ways, being able to just lean into that experience of the spirit, the openness. I didn't realize in some ways I wasn't as open as I had hoped was. Uh, and as far as my witness, I suppose this will be ongoing. As I process this experience, different aspects stand out, different changes that I've noticed within how I view the world, even within how my body reacts. My body got into a completely different circadian rhythm, and I've tried to maintain it because I actually felt better as a result. Um, but as far as witnesses, one, you're going to be uncomfortable, and two, is not just not being restrained about it. Not going crazy at the same time, but being able to say, yes, I'm Christian, I believe this, and here's why, and not holding back or trying to diminish it. We have good news. There it was, it is the good news. And you prayed constantly. It was like living in an area. I mean, I was at a theological college still, but even when I wasn't on it, you saw people pray in public and, over food together. Carrying that out into the world means in some ways adjusting your life around that expectation. There's so much more I could say about Tanzania and Africa and the insanity that was traveling in COVID, and just the fun logistics. But it was an absolutely blessed experience. I felt closer to land, or as close to the land as I am when I travel through more rural parts of Alaska. And it felt like home for that reason. It felt like a large, thin space that made me both realize the limitations of where I lived, the blessings of where I lived, and the fact that God's in both places as strongly. It just takes different means of approach. Thank you.